All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome in. So, as we all know, the NFL draft is tomorrow, right? Kicks off tomorrow at 8 o'clock p.m. By the way, I'm going to be streaming during it, doing like live reactions with my brother. Tyson from Let's Talk Jets Radio is going to pop in, I think, after either right before or right after the New York Jets pick. So, if you guys want to stop in and hang out for a little bit, it'll be much appreciated. If not, totally cool too. But we got a report, right? Another one of these draft reports. Coming out again, literally, less than 24 hours from the start of the draft, suggesting that the New York Jets are quote unquote exploring a trade up for a playmaker to help Aaron Rodgers. Now, the report goes on to say that, this is coming, by the way, from ESPN's Rich Cimini. He said it would be an even louder statement if they trade up for a playmaker. The Jets are exploring those options, league sources said. Cimini wrote, it would be the ultimate win-now move, giving up current and perhaps future draft capital to move up for a pass catcher. Douglas is an aggressive GM, having traded up in the first round in 2 of his 4 drafts. In those cases, though, he had multiple first-round picks. Okay, so there's pros and cons here, right? There's actually a lot to unpack. The first is whenever you're talking about a draft trade, you must identify a team that is willing to move back, right? You can't just trade up because you feel like it and that's it, right? Like, who is the suitor within the top? We're talking top 10 here. The Jets are trying to move up within the top 10. Yeah, it's going to be expensive. So I think for me, the first 3 team, like Caleb's 1, QB2, probably Jaden Daniels. I think it's going to be Drake May to the Patriots at spot number 3. But if it's not New England making the pick, it'll probably be a Minnesota or somebody like that. Maybe the Raiders get aggressive and try to move up. Bottom line is, I think QBs are going 1, 2, and 3. I think at the end of the day, Arizona stays at 4. I just have a very, very difficult time looking at Arizona, looking at the holes on, really looking at the lack of depth at wide receiver, them losing Hollywood Brown, the urgency to give Kyler Murray a true perimeter weapon, right? Somebody who can really hurt defenses by himself. He doesn't need to be schemed open. Marvin Harrison, who was literally being argued going either second or in some cases first overall when Justin Fields started playing well, he could fall in your lap at spot number 4, and he's considered like, the best wide receiver prospect since Jamar Chase. He's there at 4, and the Cardinals pass. That to me is, to me, you're going to have to blow Arizona away with an offer. I'm talking 3 first-round picks. I just don't see the Jets doing that. So you move down, and you get the Chargers at 5, and this could make some sense, right? I think the Chargers do want to trade down. I think they want to fill right tackle. But at the same time, it's like the Chargers really need help at wide receiver as well. So unless they love a Brian Thomas, or they love, Mitchell from Texas, or whoever it may be, somebody that they feel like they can get later, or the drop off isn't as big, I feel, and also too, one thing that we have to keep in mind, the competition to trade up, right? If May goes 3 to New England, Daniels is off the board, Caleb's off the board. We got, and you're the Chargers sitting there at 5. You got the Jets calling, and you got Minnesota on the other line. Minnesota's trying to move up for McCarthy. The Jets are trying to move up for Neighbors. I think Minnesota just has more capital that they can offer, right? 11 and 23 is much, much better than 10 and a 3rd-round pick and a future pick and whatnot. I think, again, the LA Chargers are trying to reload. They're not trying to rebuild. So I think I would give the Jets a slight chance to make a deal with the Chargers, but I think in the end it's just going to be too expensive, right? Because not only do you have Minnesota calling, but you also have the bidding war aspect. LA can keep on driving the price up for the Jets if they want, and if they have, again, the Vikings on the other line. The New York Giants, to me, gosh, all indications there's reports coming out that the Giants are trying to trade up, let alone trading back. I think trading back to for the Giants makes a ton of sense for them because they have so many damn holes on the football team. But the Giants, ironically enough, are kind of in a similar position as the Jets, where they really need help at wide receiver. They can really use an offensive lineman. And with Darren Waller's future up in the air, do the Giants consider Brock Bowers? Maybe not necessarily at 6, but, could the Giants slide back to 10 and draft Brock Bowers, right? If they love him. But of course, if Waller stays, then the pick would look maybe a little questionable. But not trying to dive too far down the rabbit hole here. I think if I was a Giants fan though, and Malik Neighbors is sitting there for your team, who is guaranteed to be the team's best wide receiver the second he steps into the Giants facility, and you are trading within the in-city rival Jets to where they can come up and go snag Neighbors, and you slide all the way back to 10 and you miss out on the second or arguably first best number one wide receiver in the class, according to some people out there. I think that could rub the Giants fans the wrong way, because the Jets don't have another one that they can offer. They don't have another second round pick that they can offer, right? So what's the compensation really going to look like for the Giants? It's just, in my opinion, unrealistic to think about the Jets trading 10 and 72 and then them being able to shoot up into the top 10. I think it's going to take a lot more than that. The Titans at 7 is interesting, right? Because the Titans, Joe Alt makes all the sense in the world. I think, though, the argument is fair with Callahan running the show with, of course, son as head coach, father's O-line coach. They could have the philosophy, hey, we like a lot of guys in this draft. We can make it work. We have a history of developing offensive linemen. We're going to go with a pass catcher, or we can trade back. We can shoot back to 10, maybe draft Brock Bowers there, because there has been some smoke that Tennessee could potentially like Brock Bowers. We can just go scoop up an offensive lineman who we feel could be a starter year 1 in round 2. Jordan Morgan from Arizona, what if he falls? Tyler Guyton at right, on the right side. I think there's a lot of options in this year's class for potential starters in day 1. And if they feel as a staff like they have confidence that they can develop an offensive lineman, I personally wouldn't be shocked if the Titans want to move back because of how they feel about their own coaching abilities, their own developmental skills as a coaching staff. But I don't want to overthink it here. I don't think the Titans should overthink it. I think the Titans should just stick there and draft Joe Alt. And then we get to the Atlanta Falcons at spot number 8. And this, to me, is the most realistic spot to move up with, right? Or the most realistic team, rather, to move up with. Because you're not going to have to give up a ton to move up literally 2 spots. I think if you're the Falcons, you can go with a corner. You can go with a defensive tackle. You can go with a pass rusher. And you're going to be getting a massive upgrade, right? I think Atlanta's probably not thinking offensive side of the football. That's just a guess, but it's, my assumption here. So really your concern is the Bears, right? At spot number 9, what are they going to do? Well, let's just play it out. If the Jets move up to spot number 8 and we draft Rome Odunze, and Chicago is now looking at the 9th overall pick saying, we can, with the 9th pick in the draft, we can go get the best defensive player in this entire class. We can hand pick him. But the Falcons have to be okay with that, right? It doesn't make sense if the Falcons are eyeing Dallas Turner, because Dallas Turner makes a ton of sense for Chicago. Now you're sitting there, if you're the Falcons, saying, well, great, we just missed out on the number 1 edge rusher in the class. The only way this works is if the Falcons feel good about multiple defensive players in this year's class. Again, whether that's a Terrion Arnold, whether that's a Byron Murphy, one of my favorite players in this class, Dallas Turner, Verse, Latu, the Mitchell, a corner. I think the Falcons could go in a bunch of different directions. But again, what would it cost to trade up those 2 spots? I don't think it would just be 1 pick. I think it would be a lot cheaper to go from 10 to 8 than 10 to 6, obviously, or 10 to 5, obviously. But of course, there are potential downsides to But of course, right, we have to talk about the downsides, the potential downsides to trading up. I mean, you're looking at the Jets roster. Yeah, it's really top heavy. Like, the starting lineups, the names on paper, were stacked. Mike Williams, Tyron Smith, Aaron Rodgers, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, Conklin, right? Like, there's a lot of AVT, There's a lot of really, really good football players in the event that we do trade up, Romo Dunze, whatever. Like, this Jets team on paper is stacked. But the problem is we don't have that second round pick. We don't have the pick that we traded to the Eagles for Hassan Reddick, a conditional third that could jump to a 2. So we're already, and that's in 2026. Are we really going to trade more picks to go out and land, to move up in the draft, when it's, I would say, a guaranteed lock that we can get a really, really good football player at spot number 10 where we don't have to give up more assets? I think if we were a deeper football team, I would have no issue with this. Like, you look at the Buffalo Bills, they're a great example of a team that can let their players go, like let them walk. Matt Milano gets hurt for the year, they're fine. Tremaine Edmonds, they let him go. He signs a big deal with the Bears. They're fine. They have draft picks there to replace them, to pick up the slack, pick up the production. But the Jets, it's like, man, we're really thin at specific positions. And even if these guys go out there and they're great and they're dominant, whatever, they stay healthy, they're all on most of them are on 1-year deals. So, and it's not to say, like, it feels crazy. It feels like we just drafted Garrett Wilson. It feels like we just drafted Sauce Gardner and whatnot, but it's going to come up. It's the contract situation will rear its head sooner rather than later with these guys. We're going to have to pay. We're going to have to hand out some massive contracts to keep Sauce Gardner, to keep, Garrett Wilson. It's going to be not something that we just can't sweep under the rug. And if Tyron Smith is on a 1-year deal, and Morgan Moses is on a 1-year deal, and John Simpson's on a 2-year deal, and Mike Williams is on a 1-year deal, and we don't know how long Aaron Rodgers is going to play for, Tyrod Taylor, he's up there in age. Like, there's a lot of players and positions that you can look at, that you can point to and say, man, we are like 1 deep there. Tyron Smith goes down with an injury, and you can always make the injury argument for anybody, right? For sure. But I think, geez, like we are, if we are going to be trading away more picks, we have to have insurance policies all over the place. Ones that actually work, not like last year where Rodgers gets hurt, the Jets pack it in. Yeah, we're done. We can't compete. I mean, that's such a loser mentality, in my opinion. I don't want to see that happen again. I don't think it will. I think they learned their lesson from that. But I mean, man, like, because the draw. I mean, if you're talking, okay, the Jets moving from 10 to 8, but you have to give up a 3rd round pick and either one of our 4ths or our 3rd round pick at 72 and a future 2, let's say, or a future 3. I mean, think about that. The gap in between picks. We're getting one player at 8, and we're not picking again for literally over 100 picks. There's a lot of good players that are going to be drafted from 8 to 111. So that's the risk you take, right? You want to get more top heavy, but you kind of gut the inside, right? The depth of the team, where I feel like the depth is still a major issue. So personally, I think I would rather trade back, try to shoot back to 15 with the Colts, or, move back in the draft. If Denver wants to come up, whatever it is, the Raiders want to come up, whoever, whatever situation, try to slide back in the draft. I would say, 10 to 12 spots back. I would say maybe the farthest back that would make sense for the Jets is probably 22 with the Eagles, but that's pushing it. But I mean, think about it. If we can trade back, go get Brian Thomas, or Fontenot from Washington at like 16 or 17 or 20, whatever it is, and we get a second, and we get a future pick, and we maybe get like an extra mid-round pick or something, that to me is ideal, because we're not sacrificing anything, and we're still upgrading the roster. We're still going to get an impact guy. Again, one thing I've said, I feel like for months, is this draft to me is like rolling out on a silver platter. It's going to be so hard to mess this thing up. To me, this is like the easiest draft that Joe Douglas has to navigate and maneuver around. There's just so many options. There's so many options that make sense for the Jets. Like, again, it's just going to be difficult to mess this thing up. So I think in the end of the day, the Jets will be fine. I think we can probably sit at 10 and get a really, really good football player. If we trade up, we're going to get a really good football player. If we move down 5 spots, 10 spots, whatever, we're going to get a really good football player at a position of need. This draft is really deep at positions of need for the New York Jets. So yeah, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it. I can't wait for tomorrow. I got a mock draft coming today. There's a 2-hour, 32-man mock draft that's going to be happening over on Bleacher Report on their app. That starts at 2. I'm going to be making the pick for the Jets and then kind of giving my opinion on what the Pats do at 3, the Dolphins and the Bills do later on in the draft. So that should be really, really cool. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it. And as always, go Jets.